everybody. My name is Vanessa Brown, and thank you for joining me at this session. This session is called Not an Island, Identifying Resources for Future Educators on Campus. So I want to start off by introducing myself. As I mentioned, my name is Vanessa Brown. I'm the Region 1 TAFE Secretary. And for those of you that are not familiar, TAFE is the Texas Association of Future Educators. This is my 16th year in education that we have just completed. I teach the education courses at my campus. I also teach chemistry. I am certified in science composite, family consumer sciences, and I do have an administrative certification. I also teach dual enrollment education courses at South Texas College in the Rio Grande Valley. And so I thought this was a great picture to share of myself. I'm down front in the middle in the red glasses. And these are some of my kids that competed at the TAFE State Conference in McAllen last year. And so when I talk about my kids or things that my kids are doing, I probably am talking about the students that are in TAFE and in the education course. So just to kind of give you some insight in this picture, I do have 7 seniors that graduated with their associate's degree in education. This is actually going to be the first year, this coming year, 2020-2021, will be the first year that we will offer 4 years of comprehensive education courses, ending in the practicum, where hopefully if we're back on campus in the spring, our students will be able to travel to the neighboring elementaries and middle schools to interact with students and shadow and learn from their teachers. So the title of our presentation comes from this quote by John Donne. And the quote is, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." And so I remember my first year teaching. I was teaching 2nd grade. And one of my mentors, I was lucky enough to have a lot of really experienced teachers that were helping me out that first year. But one of my mentors said, "It doesn't matter what's happening in the other classrooms, because when you close the door, you have control over that room, and that is your island." And I took that to heart. So my first few years of teaching, I kind of stayed to myself. I made sure that I knew what was going on in my room, and everything that was happening outside my room really wasn't my problem. But what I discovered over time was it was really hard to get things done in isolation. And it was really hard when all of the information and all of the support and all of the ideas had to come from inside my room. So what I want you to approach this session with, the thought that I want you to have as you go through this session, is that you don't have to be the expert in everything. You are not an island. You are a piece of the continent. You are part of a campus. You are part of a community. You are part of a school. And so all of those resources, all of those outside things are available to you so that you can have that help for yourself and ultimately that help for your students. So I want us to start small. And we're going to start at the micro level, and then we'll go progressively bigger as we go through the information and the resources that we have available at different stages in our, different stages in our progression of trying to get information for our students. So we want to start small and close to home. As educators, we listen, we speak, we plan, we organize, we help, we research, we study, and we learn. And we do all of these things, we possess all of these skills at varying degrees of success. I would say that I'm not a good listener, but what I hope to model to my students is that there is a time to listen. I don't think that I'm a very good speaker. I sometimes find, and I have found as I'm preparing for this session and the other session that I'm presenting, that comes into my vocabulary a lot. But I find that when I'm presenting on topics that I'm familiar with, I become more comfortable with what I'm saying. I know that I'm an excellent planner. because I've been planning this and planning for the school year and planning for what I'm going to do with my personal children and what I'm going to do with the organization. So these are all skills that you all have to varying degrees. When you are talking about making resources available to your students, to your club, to the children that you serve, you need to start with looking at your own strengths and weaknesses. And look at your strengths as things that you can model for your students. I'll give you a great example. The world history teacher at our campus is a traveler. He's traveled all over the globe. He has tons of pictures, but he gets really, really nervous when he has to speak in front of a class. In fact, I've observed him in his classroom, and he prefers to present from the back of the room with the students facing away from him. He came into my classroom to observe my communication style and the way that I interacted with students. And we talked about how comfortable we were with organizing ourselves and organizing our presentations, and how those things added to our classroom styles, our teaching styles, and our students' learning styles. Helping each other was part of what I was modeling to the students. And so they got to see him in my classroom. They got to see me in his classroom. Some of them actually were present when we were talking and debriefing and trying to figure out what we could take from each other's lessons to improve our own lessons. So when you are looking at resources to share with your student, remember to start with yourself. You have a strength, and it may be something that's not listed here. You have things that you can improve about yourself, and it may be things that are not listed here. One of the most powerful things that you can tell your students in the course of a lesson is, I don't know. But if you can follow that statement up with, but let's find out, you've not only changed the mindset of the situation, you've also given them a great example of how you as an educator are also a lifelong learner. So I want you to take a minute, and we're going to have a brief pause. And I want you to quickly list 3 strengths that you have that you model to your students, and 3 areas of improvement that you can use to model to your students ways in which they can shift their mindset and that they can help you and that you can help them improve each other. So this is really just for yourself. You're not going to be sharing it. This is a pre-recorded session, but I will be sharing my contact information with you at the end. But I want you to think about everything you do in the classroom. Some of us are not patient. Some of us have endless patience. And both of those can be strengths and weaknesses in different situations. So I'm going to give everybody a minute and a half to think about what 3 strengths you have and what 3 areas of improvement you have, and how you can use those as a resource for giving your students skills that they might need as educators. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to think about your own strengths and areas of improvement and how those can help your students improve themselves as well. If this is something that you'd like to talk about later, I'll share my contact information with you. Or if it's something that you think would be great to have a conversation with your peers or your team or in a professional development, this is definitely something that you all can use to think about how to strengthen yourselves and strengthen your teams in your school. The second thing you can do to expose your students to resources that are available on campus is to open your circle. And so think about who else is in the building. The campus that I work at is very small. Our enrollment is under 400. We have 24 teachers. And so I have access to a limited amount of staff, which is different from what you might have at a comprehensive high school. So I have a librarian, a social worker, a security officer, we have administrators, and we have other teachers. What I'd like to do is give you 30 seconds to write down any other resources or any other adults in the building that you might have access to that are not listed here. Hopefully by now you've been able to generate a short list of people on your campus that can share their expertise with you. And so I want you to think of these people as buckets of information that you and your students can access. Now, if you are on a small campus like mine, I tend to have interactions with my coworkers, all 24 of my coworkers, on a regular basis. We are the kind of campus that if somebody is not in for the day, we all know that they're not in for the day. I've also worked at a comprehensive high school that had over 250 teachers, and sometimes you never saw anybody, even within your own department. So you're going to have to figure out what works best for you as far as communicating with others in your building. Now, if you are going to be the one taking on these interactions and being the first point of contact for these resources, then you want to develop a set of questions to ask your peers. Some of the things that come up in conversation when somebody is new to our campus is, what schools did you attend? What was your area of study? What other work experience do you have? We've been really fortunate that for our CTE teachers, most of them have had outside work experience that is incredibly diverse and that allows us lots of opportunities for the students to hear and talk to people with varying backgrounds. What do you wish you knew about your first year teaching? What advice would you give a first year teacher? And what is your area of expertise? And this last question is really important. At our campus, 75% of our teachers have master's degrees. But every one of those 75% of the teachers has a different area of focus. So even in our math department, where every teacher has a master's degree, each of them has focused in a different area. In our science department, each teacher with a master's has a different area of focus. In fact, some of our teachers have multiple masters and multiple areas of expertise. So if you were the first point of contact, one thing that you can do is send out a Google form where you can ask these questions briefly. But if you are going to model the relationship building to your students, then it's probably best to have the conversations either in person or online face-to-face. Now, what I do at my campus is that I have my education 1,300 students interview teachers as their first lab assignment. And every student has to interview 2 teachers, their favorite teacher, and they have to sign up for this because otherwise everyone would interview the 9th grade English teacher. And so I don't want her bombarded with 20 interviews. And they also have to interview a junior or senior level teacher that they are afraid of. Now, everyone is afraid of the senior English teacher. I don't know why. She's a wonderful person, but it seems to be that everyone's just scared of senior English. So what I have them do is I challenge them to pick a teacher that they don't know, someone that scares them, somebody that they think might challenge them, and somebody that they're really familiar with. And what they do is they generate a set of questions. I give them these questions to start off with. And then I have them develop 5 questions of their own. Some of them are really great questions like, what hobbies do you have outside of work? Some of them are sillier questions like cats or dogs. But what they're doing is they're building those relationships and they're delving into their teachers' habits and thinkings and background. Now, when they turn in their reports to me, that gives me more depth on my peers. And so then I'm able to use the information that I have about those teachers to say, hey, Mr. History teacher, you have a specialty in Reconstruction era United States. Can you talk to my students about people with disabilities and the prejudices that they faced in getting educated? You are an expert in your subject, and now you can tap into the other experts in the other areas that are aligned to your subject that exist in your building. You can also have your students interview those personnel in your building that are not teachers, like your librarian, like your social worker, your resource officer. Your administrators at some point were teachers. And each of them has experience and expertise that you can tap to provide information to your students. Now, the really cool thing as we're thinking about potentially teaching online in the fall of 2020 is that these questions can be developed ahead of time. And these individuals can record their answers. And now it becomes a resource for your instruction for you to use for years to come. So typically, if you're asking teachers about themselves, about their ideas, about what advice they would give, that's not going to change over time. And so if you do develop these questions, if you create this repository of information for your students, just make sure that you're doing it in a way that is professional, that is being a model of professional communication, and also that you're making it clear to the people that you're asking these questions of what you will be doing with their answers. So if it is only for your class, make sure that it's available in a way that only your class has access to it, because you want to make sure that in the process of gathering their information, you're not damaging other relationships. The next step is to go outside your building. So find the experts that are around you. The really cool thing is that each of our schools is part of a larger community. Our schools are part of a school district, or they're part of a charter, or they're part of some other organization. And so there are layers of people around you that have different area of expertise. For you to be in contact with them requires that you explain why you need the information that you're asking for or why you are requesting their time. The easiest thing to do is for you to create a mission statement. I am requesting information about because I am going to do this. It's really important for you to provide specific dates and times. If you reach out to a community member or to a member of your district that's not immediately at your campus and you say, please let me know when you're available, they are never going to be available. So you want to make sure that you are specific, but flexible in your specificity. So maybe you need them this Friday, but it would be okay if they came next Friday also. So you want to be able to give them a target, a way for them to say, well, I can't make it this Friday, but next Friday would be okay. And lay out what information you need from them. We were really fortunate this past fall to have one of our educational diagnosticians come into our class to present on the process of creating an IEP for a student. So she was able to come in with an already completed document and then walk the students through a process of how they, as educators, would provide input and be able to help the student and the parent understand what was going on. But that involved communication between her and myself ahead of time. And in that communication, I explained that I had already taught the students about IDEA, the history of special education in our school, in our district, what resources we provided as a district, and I needed her expertise in developing the plan and showing students how that plan was developed. If you lay the foundation, if you create the cake, then all these experts have to do is come in and put on the frosting. And so that's a lot easier for them to manage, but that requires that when you invite them, you are very intentional and specific about what you are wanting from them. Now, the great thing is because you are working with students, you can have them do the work. And so getting your students involved is really important because for you, the information is not something that you need. As educators, you know all of the things. They are the ones that are having to learn what it is that they need. This is an opportunity for you to go back to those skills that you have mastered and the skills that you need to improve and model for your students how things are done. So you can have them serve as guides to and from a location. If you have a college recruiter come, if you have somebody from a program come in to speak to your students, you can have your students be the escort. You can have them be a facilitator. You can have them serve as tech support for that person. And so it gives them an opportunity to work on those skills also. This is also the point where you can have students reach out to members of the community in your place. The only thing that I would recommend is that if you are having a student be the first point of contact for somebody at your central administration office or somebody in the community, make sure that you are included in those emails. Because they are still your students and they're working in the capacity of preparing things for your classroom, you want to make sure that you are as aware as possible of all of the conversations that are happening. And the last thing that I want to recommend to you is don't take no for an answer. If you are asking for this Friday or next Friday at noon and they're not able to make it, then you can say, thank you so much for your response. Will Tuesday work better? And so eventually, if you ask often enough, somebody will say yes. It's also possible that you can ask for them to recommend someone else who might be able to help you. And so, especially in communities that are smaller, people have a hard time saying no, and that works to your advantage. So if you are asking human resources to come and help you with interviews for your students, and they say, sorry, Friday doesn't work, or we can't send 5 people from our department, you can always say, great, are 2 people available? Is 1 person available to come and talk about interview tips? You want to make sure that you're flexible, but that you're still maintaining that communication and that you're giving them an opportunity to say yes. There are also some resources for you on the internet. So as we are entering, or as we are continuing in what I'm sure we have all heard of described as unprecedented times, the internet is becoming more and more of a resource for our professional development and for our students' professional development. So depending on the requirements of your program and your class, you may have students that are required to complete professional development hours. In the program that I have, our students are required to do 16 hours of classroom observations. If classes are online, that's an adjustment that I will have to make so that my students can meet those requirements. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage them to use these websites to complete their 16 hours of professional development. The first website that I want to talk about is edutube.org. And this has educational videos in different categories. So if you are teaching the education courses, it actually has specific courses for education. The really great thing is that you can go back and sort this by duration and plan for 2 10-minute videos or a 5-minute video or a 2-minute video. And so the great thing about this, as opposed to YouTube, is that these are all specifically cataloged for education. And so it makes it a little bit easier for you, and it makes you less likely to run into the rabbit hole on YouTube where it's 4 hours later and now you're watching Britney Spears videos from the 90s. The second website that I want to share with you is Discovery Education. And the really cool thing about Discovery Education is that their professional development area is really, really intensely developed and looking at school leadership and increasing student engagement. So for you to have an account here, the login is free. I do encourage you to have your students use their school email address because there are some added perks that they get because they are on a school domain. And they will also become part of the DEN, the Discovery Education Network community. And that's where people can collaborate. They can share professional development experiences. There's forums where they can look for information and resources. And so this is a really great tool for you, but also for them as resources when they don't have other areas available for them to get information. The National Science Teachers Association is also a website that's really helpful. Now, the National Science Teachers Association, NSTA, has a join option, but you have a lot of things that you can access without necessarily joining the site. Now, the example page that I've given you has their web seminar series. I do encourage you that if you are going to engage in these web seminars, that you watch the series, because a lot of them are smaller parts of a larger series. So you want to make sure that you're able to get all of the sections in so that you are getting all of the information that's necessary. Now, even though it is about, it is Science Teachers Association, there are good strategies that can be applied to all content areas, especially right now. The distance learning strategies are really helpful because we can do hands-on in all types of classroom. So this is one that's really important. Again, you can join, you get a few extra things for joining, but this has a lot of professional development available to students and teachers that you may want to access. The last website that I want to share with you is weareteachers.com. And so weareteachers.com has a lot of information on teacher wellness. These are all articles or blogs or posts created by educators, and they touch on a variety of topics. I'm a teacher and my own kids are falling behind in virtual schooling. It's really hard, but parents and teachers don't get to decide when kids return to school. These are all part of the conversations that you have been having with your peers. But if you use these articles in your classroom, it also gives your students an insight into what their thinking and mindset may be as teachers if they are in similar situations. And what would we not have all loved to have some insight into what was going to happen 6 months ago? So weareteachers.com, again, you don't have to log in, you don't have to register for anything, but it's a really good resource that deals with teacher wellness. Oh, I was wrong. That was not my last page. Okay, and then the last one, I believe this is the last one, is teachers.org. And again, teachers.org, this one you do have to create a login, a username, and a password. but it does have articles, it has lesson plans, and most importantly for your students as they're on the path to becoming educators, it does have a list of scholarships for teachers. This is also a repository of scholarships that you as current teachers can apply for if you are interested in getting your master's degree. So there's specific criteria for each of the scholarships, but it's also information for yourself if you are interested, in pursuing the master's degree. So before we leave, I do want to share my contact information with you. You can find me on Twitter at NessaBrown27. I'm also on TikTok, but it's not as exciting as some of the other TikToks of cool teachers that I've seen out there. My cell phone number is 956-240-7874. I do recommend that you text me if you do want to reach out for me, just because that's easier with everything else that I have going on. You can email me at my personal email address, which is nessabrown27@gmail. And just let me know if you're emailing from a school address, whether your school accepts outside emails. I don't give out my school email address because we can't receive emails from other districts. And if you're interested in following me on Facebook, you can find me at Vanessa Brown. If you have questions about this presentation or about TAFE or about Region 1, please feel free to reach out to me. I am available. I teach high school and I have 2 young children, but I find a lot of time at the end of the day when they are asleep. So if you reach out to me and I don't respond right away, don't worry, I will get to you, I promise. I do want to thank everybody for taking your time to improve yourself over your summer break to make sure that you are improving as an educator, that you are getting the best and most updated information for your students. And if you want to reach out or you want to get in contact with me, you have questions, comments, you want to collaborate on something, I am open to whatever you might have. And thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great school year.